Welcome back to Multifamily Unpacked. I'm Hannah O'Leary, producer of the show. On this episode of Inside the Funnel, we're joined by Katie Harman, enterprise consultant at Funnel. Katie has nearly a dozen years of multifamily experience under her belt, which shapes the way she works with multifamily leaders to bring their operations goals to life. We also talk about her firsthand experience with large scale change management. Let's get into it. Katie, welcome to Inside the Funnel. Thank you for joining us. Across the multifamily industry, everybody's portfolio is different, everybody's goals are different. You work with some of our biggest clients and you work with them to shift their operating model, both with AI and centralization, to achieve their unique business goals. Because you have that on the ground experience, it allows you to understand our clients and the industry better. So, I think the customers that I work with really appreciate the experience. Knowing how one company operates is very different than knowing how multiple companies operate. But coming to the table and saying, hey, I've seen this work. I've seen this not work. If you really want this to work, let's think about how we're going to make it work, right? Let's look at maybe some examples of other customers who have made this work, or let's look at examples of customers who couldn't make it work and how do we make it work for you? I have almost a dozen years of multifamily experience. So walking into the room and saying, I've been where you have been is a really powerful thing. Can you tell me about a real customer story that makes you really proud of your work here at Funnel? What wild property management company dream did you get to team up with them on making come true, and what did that look like? Yeah, thanks for having me. I had a customer last year who they identified that they were missing about 45% of their prospect calls, walked them through what the could be, and we're able to successfully launch them on Funnel's contact center platform, which turned a 45% missed call rate of prospect calls into a 4% missed call rate for prospect calls, which means that they were able to answer their customers quicker, faster, more efficient, as well as share their brand and their business to their customers. That's amazing. That's such a huge decrease. I feel like that is truly what dreams are made of in the leasing journey. Before
Oh,
coming to
yeah.
Funnel, you worked at a really large, well-respected property management company, and you were there for their early centralization journey. So there in 2020, that is when the industry, I would say industry leaders started their centralization journey or formalized parts of it. And that's really the bleeding edge of like where centralization became the buzzword that is now today. Can you talk to us about how centralization has shifted and how companies in general think of it today and how maybe that compares, contrasts, or is the same to your experience on the ground at a property management company? Sure. And I think centralization is this buzzword, even in 2026 still. It was very early on in the journey 6 years ago in 2020. But looking at centralization today, the great thing is that what we're seeing are customers are identifying gaps in the customer journey where they need to plug in extra reinforcement. It could be a person who only completes applications. They work with the applicant to process their identity verification, their pay stubs, generate the lease, send the lease, sign the lease. That maybe the on-site team wasn't able to capture that information efficiently because they have tours or they have residents walk in the door. So what we are seeing is we're seeing where companies are identifying a gap and they're plugging in somebody who is specialized to do that one job or those two jobs, which relieves the site teams of that task so that they can do more purposeful things, touring, closing the lease, moving residents in, renewing residents. And that's the really cool part is seeing the identification of how we can
plug in funnel centralization efforts, whether it's service teams or just different task routing into their business model. I think also previously people were hired in multifamily as you have to do everything. And today customers are able to identify, oh, this person's really good at this, but they may not be too good at this. So you had this previous 50 to 75% output of this employee. Now they're doing something they really like to do. So they come to work every single day, really excited to work. So centralizing just doesn't mean pushing everything into one place. It also looks at employee sentiment and output, but also the biggest thing that centralization does is identify efficiency and convert that efficiency. So that's really what we identified in my previous experience and what we're identifying and what funnel is able to do for the customers who do want to centralize.
Okay. So, Katie, like, as you think about centralization, what's the biggest roadblock or mistake that you see companies make with change management after living through so much change management on the operator side and the vendor side now? I'm sure you have some strong opinions loosely held about how to get a large group of people to all be moving the same direction. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I will openly say that I think the biggest roadblock or the biggest piece that companies forget is that you have to get buy-in. So the executives that are making the decision and putting and investing in the technology, investing in teams, that's great. But the operators, the people who are on site, the site teams, the centralized teams, they're the one who are actually going to be putting these business practices into place. And I have seen it done really well, and I've seen it done not so well. And so I think the one thing that we can't forget about is that even the little guys are a part of the big dream. And so ensuring that you get buy-in from the top down, create excitement. This is new. This is exciting. Here's what time you're going to get back in the day. Here's what you're going to be able to do. Those types of things to build up that anticipation and build up that momentum.
It makes sense that you need people at all levels of the business who agree with the plan. What are some really tactical ways that you've seen companies get team members of all levels? Is that, hey, we do 1,000 on-sites with people? Is
Mhm.
that, hey, we make sure that we keep sending the same message over and over again? We ground a lot of this business change into our core values. What have you seen work in day-to-day tactics that people could walk away from this and go take to their own centralization or AI or whatever change they're trying to make efforts?
Yeah, I think the biggest one is just the hype. So you send out teasers or you do a training, and whether the training is in person or virtual, site visits, check ins, also identifying teams that potentially will be a little bit more vocal and put together roundtables. Does this work? Does this not work? Tell me about your day. Those types of things, all to get the teams that are gonna be executing this in the middle of what they feel like they have a say in the process too. You're creating hype and then continuing on not just through rollout, but through stabilization and beyond. Something I used to put together were funnel tips of the week or funnel tips of the month, or there's a new product or a new feature that's releasing. Let's talk about this in a all company meeting. So everything we went into or everything that I've seen is always a either a learning opportunity, a training opportunity, or some sort of hype up of this is coming, this is new, this is what we're doing. But also, how are you feeling? How do you feel about this?
I love that. So it's really keeping communication truly like a 360 view where it's like,
Yeah.
hey, your feedback is important to make this go well. Here's us listening to you to make sure that your feedback's being implemented and we're moving all in the right direction. And at the same time, here's core property management team who's driving the initiative saying, hey, here's where we're going and here's what's in it for you. And why at the end of the day, like this should make your life and your job better and give you time to do the things you want to do.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think also the biggest hurdle was user adoption for the folks who are maybe stuck in the past, who may have only previously known the old system. So you're going to have people who are tenured who only know the old way, and then you are going to have people who are jumping on board at your company who only know the new way. And so figuring out the dynamics of user adoption of how do you keep your tenured agents or your tenured employees engaged while also ensuring that the new employees understand this is how we do things.
Are there any best practices or things that you saw worked really well getting people who might be more hesitant to adopt new practices or anything that makes sense to talk through there?
I think just ensuring that we're not moving backwards, we're moving forwards and we're staying with the times. The company's business model has changed and that's the way it is. I hate to be blunt about it, but sometimes it's if you don't keep going, you fall backwards.
I feel like everybody likes to talk about Blockbuster and Netflix,
Mhm.
and nobody wants to be the Blockbuster of that story. And so part of the change is that too. One of the things I love about Funnel is that our core AI philosophy, how we build our products, how we support our clients, is that AI is there to aid and enhance teams and humans. It's not there to replace them. So when you're working with large enterprise clients, large enterprise teams, how do you make that a reality for them? How does AI embedded in all of the workflows throughout the CRM influence and enhance teams day to day? What does that overarching AI why look like on the ground for people?
Yeah, so the great thing about Funnel is that it's all customizable to an extent. But if your business model is more human than AI, great. If you want your humans or you want your team members to answer the phones during the day and AI only take care of inquiries after hours, fantastic. If you want AI to present to every prospect because your team members are focused on follow up or focused on the people who come into the office, great. There's no one funnel's not one dimensional. It's definitely a tool that can be customized based off of your business model. And that's the great part that I love about it. It's not no customer does the same exact thing the same exact way. So being able to plug funnel into your business model, whether it's more touch points for humans or more touch points for AI, we can do it. And that I think is the best part is that it's not a one-stop shop. We can say, "Hey, let's help develop the way that you want to run your business." And that's the biggest piece of this AI plus humans.
And that balance can shift based on like where people are in their journey,
Yeah.
when people are inquiring, how they're inquiring. And so like really like you said, being able to like free people to operate their business how it makes sense to meet their business goals is our true end goal. We're switching gears again. What are you excited about outside of work? Who are you outside of work? And how does that bleed over in terms of like how you show up here at Funnel day to day?
Yeah, so I am just a girl. So I live in Houston and love that Houston is a melting pot. Every Saturday, my husband and I go find a brand new coffee shop that we've never been to. Or if we're having a bad week, we go to one of our tried and true favorites. But I look at that and I translate that into funnel as always being curious to what is next, or always being curious to can I do something or recommend something to a customer that would allow them to move the needle forward? I like to read. I like to watch movies. Typically, I'll read the book, then watch the movie, or vice versa. And I think that goes hand in hand too with the work that I do as a consultant with Funnel is just always being nimble, curious, figuring out a puzzle. How does something fit here that may fit here? That's me in a nutshell.
If I think about how you work with our clients, a lot of it isn't just, okay, here's where we need to go. It's asking a lot of underlying questions about, like, why are these the goals? Help me understand them so that I can help make sure that we're configuring this and setting you and your teams up in a way that allows you to hit them and truly being that partner in translating that journey. That's great.